Greetings, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Pilot Review Show. I am Captain Blade J52, and I am joined by some of my merry cohorts this week. We have with us our resident Timber of the Wolf clan.
The zombies must die. Sorry, I'm playing Black Ops 4, so if you hear anything right now for the next few minutes, I'm sorry.
Especially him screaming like a little girl.
That ain't gonna happen.
Sure it's not. But anyway, we also have our resident RP hologram and GM for the evening, Artie.
Hiya.
And lurking somewhere in the background, all quiet like, we have our resident Neela, who may or may not be conscious.
What up?
Okay, so he is conscious. I wasn't aware if he was here or not. But, anyways, folks, we do have some interesting stuff to get through this week, including some new events in our RP event that we were talking about last week. So, let's go ahead and dive into these things. Now, first and foremost, for our beginning blog, we have the Ships of Discovery joining the Infinity Box over on console for you guys. So, basically, some of the stuff from the Infinity Box is now going to include the Discovery class stuff. You've got the Crossfield, you've got the Sarcophagus, you've got some of the DS9 themed traits, as well as the sensor-linked weapons, which is going to be very fun for you guys to get a hold of. But, yeah, that's kind of covers that, really.
Yeah, short, sweet, and to the point.
A lot of good things coming y'all's way.
Definitely is. But up next, we have our RP blog for the Battle of the Binary... Well, a small little blog about the RP... Ugh, words, butts. Keep wanting to say RP. But we have a small blog about the TFO, the Battle at the Binary Star. I can't words this evening,
Here, I'll
folks,
do it. It's
apparently.
a small blog about the Battle of the Binary Stars Task Force Operation, which apparently is coming out next week. And in that blog, we're getting marks like we would get our Crystalline event. So 14 marks, and we're getting the Beacon of Kalis, if I remember the name correctly. And it's another one of those fleet call-ins, like your Nimbus Pirates or your pilot ship call-in. So it's another call-in with its own unique ability. I don't have the blog in front of me at the moment. And you're basically going to relive the Battle of the Binary Stars. So from what it's describing, when you warp in, you're going to automatically get a holo generator over your ship so that your ship's aesthetics in the run look like you belong in that era. Which I've seen, and I don't mind that. To me, that's kind of awesome, because, you know, if you're wanting to be authentic to the era and really play through as if you were in that Discovery episode, it's actually rather nice. I've seen a few people that are irritated about it because the thinking is the real end game for Star Trek Online is Space Barbie. But, you know, what are you guys' thoughts on this one? Because I like this.
I really do like this. It hasn't been for a very long time that you get to jump into a TFO, PvE match or whatever, and feel like, you know, it's in universe. Not like, oh, I'm going to do Kittimer Conduit, you know, for the 30th time. You think the Borg would stop building right here and go to some other place, right? This is a simulation. You get to relive it so you can actually learn what's going on. It actually feels like it works in universe instead of like a one-off thing.
For me, I'm glad because this is actually going to give an aggro dump to people whenever they pick up the beacon, because it says they will, as the light fades, enemies will reset their threat assessment. Players in threatening stance will retain aggro. So if all of us are running in a group and one of you pops that in, then they're going to reset aggro on anybody but me usually, since I'm usually the one in threatening stance, so yay! Any comments from our resident Neela?
I think that it would be fun to actually be... How do I want to put this? in order to see something evolve the rest of the universe. Because with the simulation, our characters will get knowledge of said tactics for the future.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. It's an interesting way of looking at
Now,
it.
Blade, I do have one thing about this, though.
Okay.
And it's a question for the panel and for the viewers, because I want to include the viewers in this one. It's kind of a poll, if you will. This is another one of those, distress call beacons, essentially. Does anybody here on the panel and anyone in the comments section feel that there has become an oversaturation of these distress call-ins? So I think we've got like 4 or 5. I know of Nimbus, I know of Phase Worm, I know of the Pilot, which share a cooldown with your fleet support call-in, and now this.
There's also the one for the Herc that came out recently.
Yeah, so between the ones that we've got, I count fleet support as a part of that, because it's essentially a distress call.
Right.
Even though it is a, captain power. And now this one, it's like we have 4 or 5 of these that all share a cooldown, and it's a very long cooldown. Just curious if anyone out there thinks, and I want to open it to the panel first, if we have an oversaturation of those right now.
I feel like we slightly do, to the fact that, if you can get it properly and, have your recharge abilities all set up the proper way, you can get those off, in no time at all, but not at all at the same time, obviously. Because some of them do have the cooldown of, oh yeah, we're only out here for, like, barely a minute. Or, ones that was like, oh, we're here until we blow up, which would be the fleet support. But with another one of these fleet support devices, I feel like there would be a little bit of strategy to put into it. Like, what do you need more? Do you need the fast action pilot ships to go in and wreck face, or do you need a giant swarm of Herc ships to come and save your behind? Or do you need the support role of the Nimbus pirates with their healing abilities, as well as their DPS? So there's a little bit of a differentiate, of strategy to put in when you're, needing the backup.
I can kind of see that, though to me I think in some extent there is a bit of, I'm not going to say we're there yet, but we are getting to a very high saturation level in terms of items like this. I do like the fact, like I said, that it gives a threat wipe, essentially, to non-tanks. So that's going to be a good thing there. And I don't know, I'm kind of at the middle point where I think I would like to see some fun stuff like this, not necessarily as a fleet, a distress call type of item, but something similar. I don't really know how to put it into words, in all honesty. Like maybe a...
It's what? Basically a way for them to give the DPS players a way to drop a threat, as in, like, say someone playing Star Wars and you're in a raid and the DPS needs to drop their aggro, or heal needs to drop their aggro. They'll do the aggro. I think that's pretty much what this is. It's not so much for the ships, it's more for the aggro.
Right. I do agree with, I see where you're going with that now, yeah.
To me, it's... I would rather have seen... like I say, I like it. It's going to be a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But to me, for something like that, I do think we're getting to the point where we are getting saturated with distress call type stuff, or at least tying it to distress call type stuff, and would have rather this have been some kind of a device similar to the subspace field modulator. To where, okay, once every... let's say every 5 minutes, just to keep it simple, you could push this and you get a free aggro dump. But yeah, anyway, that's some of our thoughts on this particular thing. do let us know what you guys think as well. Do you think we're alright on the distress cost? Do you think we're at a saturation level? Or what do you guys think about that? Moving right along, we have a Red Alert weekend event, or Red Alert special event for console.
Yep, starting at Thursday, November 8th, so a little back behind us, to November 13th. Those console guys get to deal with the Borg and their Red Alert specials. You get the various different marks, as well as, that you usually get for these task force operations, and limited time. It helps you get those tier 6 rewards now. Not much else past that, except that it's going on right now.
Yeah, that pretty much touches it. And you guys will be able to get a pretty good chunk of marks off of this if you haven't been farming it already. I know it kind of sucks that they've, or I think that's what live on console yet, but it kind of sucks, yes, that they removed the daily bonuses from the red alerts, but if you keep spamming them and you just keep going in, you could come out of there with several thousand marks by the end of the day. So that is something to keep in mind. Moving right along, we have quite a bit of patch notes for the 8th, but there's far too many for us to read through all of them. A lot of bug fixes, some different stuff character-wise. So we're just going to go through and what's one or two of the bugs that stick out to each of you guys? Or one of the patch notes, I should say.
Let's see. I do like that the Walker class prototype light exploration cruiser has been added to the TOS ship fender, because that is semi near that sentry.
Okay. Yeah, is that the only one, or is there maybe one more?
There was another one. I have to re-find it. Where is it? It was just another visual issue on my end. Is the resolved various issue with Discovery security escorts. They beamed in and out with the different FX, and they now have the right beam in, beam out effect, as well as the correct weapons and the correct era appropriate uniforms. So that works out.
Okay. What about you, Sir Timber? Out of this large collection of patch notes, anything in particular that stuck out to you, good sir?
Actually, there were 3 that I was actually happy to see. First one, and this is just nice for everybody in general, removing the energy credit cost when transwarping to the start of a mission. Now, most of us don't even think about that, but depending on the mission, as I've seen this cost vary, it can cost anywhere from 20,000 to 50,000 EC when you're transwarping to a mission that is, on the other, in another quadrant or on another map, quote unquote, that kind of thing. Now that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but as a new player, when we created our new Discovery tunes, if we needed to transwarp somewhere, it's like, oh, we don't even have enough EC starting off on a fresh, brand new tune. And this is definitely going to help, especially your beginner players. They literally just started the game. They need to transwarp across the map to a mission. Now it didn't cost anything. So to me, that's a nice quality of life improvement, especially at the beginnings of the game, that I noticed. And then the other 2 resolved an issue where 360-degree weapons were unable to hit large targets on the opposite side of where they were equipped. I actually noticed this one when they announced the patch that night, or the Wednesday night prior. If I was facing a Borg cube with my Odyssey class or my Vengeance, my omnidirectional beam array would not fire at all. It would gray out and it would not fire. However, if I banked myself about 45 degrees, where I was, starting to slowly get to that broadside, it would turn on and start firing. So you wouldn't have a full 360 degree arc. You'd have maybe a 290 or a 300 on that weapon. I'm glad they got that fixed. And then resolved an issue where the Viral and the Fleet Viral, your T6 and Fleet T6 Vorcha, displaying the incorrect Starship Mastery. That's always a nice thing when they fix those kind of things. I know when I did my review of that ship, the blog stated it was supposed to have, I believe, a battle cruiser, where it's supposed to have crit severity. And when it launched, instead it had rapid repairs as if it was a normal cruiser. So fixing those kind of things really stood out to me. And then the slight changes to distress calls. As we were talking about this, they list them off that have them. They're increasing the duration of those distress calls to 45 seconds. And then they nerfed down the damage from the phased waveform beacon. But still, you got the Nimbus Pirates now for 45 seconds. The reinforcements for 45 seconds. That's not bad, all things considered. I mean, if you're needing the Nimbus Pirates for survival, that's 45 seconds of healing. That's not bad at all. So those were the 3 or 4 that stuck out to me.
Now, what about you, Sir Neela?
For me, uncommon quality phaser pistol awarded during the Discovery Era tutorial is now Mark 1 instead of Mark 0. With the existing versions can still be upgraded.
Okay.
And removed tractor beam impulses from the USS Suburba during the Discovery Era tutorial.
Okay.
To be honest, that kind of killed immersion a little bit. I was like, you shouldn't have it. Shouldn't have it.
I could see that. Or is that the only 2 for you, good sir?
Yeah, Tim hit the one I was going to talk about was the EC.
I didn't even see that. That's wonderful. Had fireworks, you know?
Yeah. Timber kind of grabbed one of mine, too. But I'd say for me, there's actually a couple of interesting ones in my book. Let's see, where was that first one?
Yeah, sorry,
just saying.
One more. The updated frequency for when mission auto hails appear. Only appear once a player has completed tutorial. Only occur for the next mission available in the mission chain. And will only occur if there's no mission in progress that is in story arc. Thank God.
Yeah, that definitely needed to happen because it was just a little overkill as often as it was hailing.
Like, it wasn't so bad before this update, but when they did the whole TFOs and getting all those pop-ups, either Quinn or Gempark, which one thing they do need to fix, bug time, Gempark sounding like Quinn.
Nope, 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 nope. Neela, you're fired.
That was
Blade, you're
funny.
fired. Blade, you're fired.
Yeah. That's definitely some of the interesting stuff. But, as far as some of mine, one of the big ones I would say is increase the damage on the primary fire of Discovery Phaser Full Auto Rifle to make up for it firing less overall shots, reduce the recharge time on secondary fire, and it can now re-roll. Now, one of our good friends, Austin, actually picked this up on his Discovery tune, and he's been wrecking face with it. It was, I want to think for him, he said it was just a hair over like 200 a bolt. And he's easily keeping up with my Zenkethi gear. And easily keeping up with my Zenkethi minigun with his full auto rifle. It fires a little bit slower, yes, but it's still hitting like a freaking truck. It is still hitting like a freaking truck. So it is definitely a weapon folks are going to want to consider, and could very easily become one of the best, if not the best, weapons in game, in my opinion. Then there was one other good one that I had seen. Where is it at? And then I will shut up about patch notes and we can move on. But you know, I cannot for the life of me find the one that. Good Lord, Timber.
Sorry.
Well, we know he's having
absolutely.
fun. But I can't find the other big one that I was going to do, but the one that Timber kind of grabbed, I did want to touch base on is... oh, here's the other one. Resolved an issue that caused Discovery characters to be unable to turn in the Delta Alliance Tier 5 rewards. So, very glad they fixed that. Discovery era Klingons no longer have access to isometric charge and positronic warhead. So that does reduce some of the stuff they have a little bit, but gets it back towards more reasonable levels. But the big thing I'm very glad for is they actually fixed the bridge officer issues, where they wouldn't beam down to various areas. That was a very, very welcome thing that got included in this. Trying to actually find the particular thing in the patch, but the good thing I could say, they were beaming down to the Dyson zone with me. They were keeping up with me. At one point, I got ahead of my bridge officers a little bit, and the only reason they got delayed was they got shot at by a group of Voth. Well, I pretty much yamcha'd that group of Voth and caught up to me in about 5 seconds. So, very glad to see that fix take effect. And I will say really quickly, and we'll move on about the distress calls, is with that increase to 45 seconds, and with the waveform beacon taking a bit of a damage nerf, it does suck, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as people are thinking, due to the increased duration. I really don't. But anyway, that's a lot of the patch notes. We kind of touched base on some of our particular ones that stuck out to us. But you can see here there's a lot of notes. There's a lot of notes to go through. Far too many for us to really go over all of them and read them. Just kind of touch base on a few. But moving along, we have the introduction of the Swarm Lockbox for you guys over on console. And basically for this one, you're getting the Swarm Lockbox. We've had this on PC for a little bit. You're going to be getting access to the Herc multi-mission science vessel from the low-buy store. And you're also going to get access to the Herc Ravager escort carrier on the in the box itself. You're going to be getting the... scroll down here. You're going to be getting some different training manuals, such as the harmonic repulsor wave, the harmonic resonance field, the harmonic lure. You're going to be getting some ground and space traits as well. You're going to be getting the hive defenses and resonating module attachment for ground, and then the hive defenses for space and resonating payload modification. You're going to get some Herc duty officer assignments. These are the ones that come from the lockboxes that give a metric buttload of XP whenever you complete one. And these that I've seen are going even beyond the temporal duty officer assignments, so definitely very fun. And then you're going to be getting, I believe it is the, where is the space weapons it talked about? Where are they? There they are. the phasic harmonic weapons, and I believe these were phasers, if I'm not mistaken.
They are.
So yep, we get the phasers, and we also have a chance to get an omni phaser, or an omni version of it, or a wide arc heavy cannons. So yeah, and a Herc Vanity Shield. So there's quite a few nice little things you can get out of this. But I know we kind of covered this previously when it released for PC. But what's some quick thoughts from you guys?
I said it once. I'll say it again. I like the insect-like look to a lot of the stuff that we're getting out of it because Herc. So it looks really nice when you actually get to use it and see it up close and personal when you're using it on the enemy instead of it having it being used on you. So I do like the visuals, the feel of the Herc ships and their weapons that we get from this. So it's really nice.
Okay. What about either you, Sir Timber, or Sir Neela?
Me personally, I am excited for just the Vanity Shield because Space Barbie.
Space Barbie is the true in-game.
And it makes my car feed look amazing.
Oh yeah.
I can see that.
Car feed for life, car feed forever.
Which I have to say is kind of funny because spoiler warning if you haven't actually played any of the missions, but using Herc and the Valkyrie stuff together kind of I feel like works. Like it was supposed to happen at some point, but I like what you're doing. That I like that. It's really nice.
And I'm excited.
Oh.
Because the way in my head it feels like the Herc and Valkyrie were kind of I think they might have teamed up at some point.
Interesting.
And then something happened, and the Valkyrie betrayed them during a major battle.
It's an interesting concept. Yeah, what about you, Sir Timber? Any quick thoughts?
I mean, when it comes down to the phaser weapons, they're pretty much going to be on par with most other phaser weapons, just based on proc rate changes thanks to Season 13, but it's not bad, and definitely if you're going for a theme build, you're trying to go up with Artie and try to tell a story, these are going to do very nicely for you. But, I mean, quite honestly, it's mainly about the traits for me, Hive Defense, and the fact that Space Barbie really is the end game, so I'm still looking to get a Herc shield.
Alrighty then.
Oh, and Timber, I got my Herc shield by someone missing 2 zeros and sold it for 5,000.
Oh.
Ouch.
Ouch.
I'm
That
like,
sucks.
mine.
I feel bad for that guy.
It's fun to be on the end of that where you get to buy it, but it also sucks being on the end where you're the one selling it, so yeah. But what do you do at that point? But anyways, that's some of our thoughts on this particular thing. You guys will enjoy this stuff. We've got a good bit of variety coming as far as some of the items in this box. But moving along, we have the Priority 1 interview with Al Rivera.
Yeah, so Priority 1 did another one of their big... lost the word there for a second. Interviews.
Interviews?
I don't know how I lost it. It's right there in front of me. Sorry. One of their big interviews with Al Rivera. and decided to get a little bit deeper into some of the new stuff coming out, some of the compare and contrast to other Star Trek stuff that will be coming around, and it's a really nice listen to. I haven't gone fully into it yet, but from what I've heard so far, I think really answers a few questions here and there, so I think it really works out. Have you guys listened to it yet, or?
I have not had a chance to get too far into it, no, sadly. I need to do that after the show. But what's some of the highlights, good sir, that I should ask?
I feel like I wouldn't be able to say it, but like give any of the highlights properly, just due to how intermixed with the details are and with the questioning. Okay. I'm just also really bad at doing impressions, so I'm not going to do that.
Alrighty, and that's fair enough. But yeah, they've got a link to the interview down below here, to where you can actually play that. And yeah, definitely check that out, because I'm sure they give some good bits of information for us. But yeah. Anyways, that's what we have for the articles this evening. There's not that very many of them, but there was some significant changes with the patch notes. This was, I think it ended up being, what was it, like a gig and a half worth of patch? Once it came down to it, or something close to
about,
that?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, there were some very significant changes that came in there, and I know some very big issues people had wanted fixed for a while, such as the boss, which I don't think their AIs were upgraded, but good lord does it feel like they were. But so yeah, definitely very big props to the dev team for so many fixes in one patch. They've definitely been upping their game lately, I can safely say, I believe. But moving along, we have our budget build for the evening. Now, there is going to be a couple significant changes to the budget builds going forward, and this is going to be our final week that we're going to assume that people have not yet reached a Tier 6 reputation, or have not yet reached Tier 6 reps unless specifically requested by somebody that wants us to do a budget build for them, because we feel it's been a decent amount of time starting next week that people should be, or should have finished up their Tier 6 reps on at least one character, or be getting pretty close to it, that we can now safely justify using the Tier 6 reps. So this next week going forward, expect to see the new costs taken into consideration in the calculations, expect to see the discounts taken into consideration, and a lot of other little fun stuff that are going to come with the new reps, including our alternate energy types finally. So for this particular ship this week, we have a Presidio, which is our Tactical Command Battlecruiser. Now, a lot of people, I've seen lately some comments, people kind of saying, well, how can you really make a good tank with this ship? I don't really see how it can happen. And this is actually one of the ships that was, or one of the first real command ships that we had aside from the Kobali Cruiser. And in fact, one of the consoles that you get from the Presidio is linked into that 4-piece set that goes along with the other command battle cruisers and the Kobali Samsar's regenerative integrity field. Now for this particular ship, I wanted to show that yes, you can indeed make a tank with this ship. It's not going to be as hard as people think that it is. That's a stigma that sadly, in my opinion, is associated with a lot of ships, because it doesn't have a particular specific layout people think is needed. They think that, well, how could you ever make a tank with that? And tanking is one of those things where if you can't do it one way, you might be able to do it another. If you can't get some damage resistance from, say, a trait, you might be able to pick it up from a console, or you might be able to pick it up from a bridge officer power. Basically meaning there's more than one road to get to point A. It's just a matter of, are you going to go through B, C, or D in order to get there, if that makes sense. And this particular ship, it's actually going to give people a lot more tools than what they think. And to show this, I wanted to do a Polaron build centered around the Morphogenic set. Now, I am a big fan of Polaron. Admittedly, I am a little biased towards the energy type, so I like to feature that in some of the builds, unless otherwise specifically requested. But for our forward weapons on this ship, now we have a 4-4 layout. We have the advanced piezo beam. This is going to help us stay alive a little bit better based off of the proc that it gives. We have 2 of our standard Polaron beams. These are going to come from the Storm Clouds Gather mission. And then we have our Morphogenic Energy Torpedo. This is a Polaron-based energy torp, meaning that it is going to get buffed off of anything that buffs our Polaron, and as well anything that buffs projectiles as well. So it kind of double dips in that respect a little bit. Then for our rear weapons, we have 3 more of our Polaron beams. And then we have our Omni Turret, as we've affectionately dubbed it here, because depending on what kind of a modifier you activate first, whether you activate a beam fire at will or whether you activate something like a scatter volley, will determine whether it acts like a beam or whether it fires like a turret. So it's basically a 2-in-1 weapon. Then for our shields, our engines, deflector, and warp core, this is a personal favorite set of mine, as it's, in my opinion, one of the stronger tank sets you can get for free. And we have the Soul Defense set. We have your shields, your engines, and deflector. Now, there is some very good strengths to these set bonuses. And for the Soul Defense set, the big strength to it is in the set bonuses that it gives you. Now, it does give some nice bonuses off of the engine, some nice bonuses off of the shield. But the real strength that it's going to get is the real strengths that it has is in the 2-set bonus and the 3-set bonus. And to answer a question in chat really quick, we've talked about setting up a public Discord. I don't think we've actually got one going just yet, but we may have one of those in the very near future, if enough people want us to do it. But the real strengths to the Soul Defense set is by having 2 of the items equipped on the ship, you get the free equivalent of a neutronium, actually slightly better because of the kinetic resist that it gives too. You get a across-the-board damage reduction, and you get the free equivalent of a neutronium armor without actually having to slot the neutronium. And you also get a very massive heal for not just yourself, but people that are close enough to you in a spherical pattern. And that's also going to be a very potent heal that can drag you from near dead back to full in some cases. It just depends on, well, a number of factors, I should say. Then, since this particular set does not come with a warp core, we have to source one out, and a favorite of ours is the Temporal Face Overcharged core, because on the budget end, in our opinion, it is very hard to beat this one, because of the capacitor that it gives them. Losing words this evening. But anyway, what it gives you in terms of the capacitor is a temporal negotiator type effect, where it basically cuts your bridge officer cooldowns in half for the duration that it's active. So this is something that in a pinch can restore your cooldowns or get them almost ready to go whenever you need. So you're going to get a lot of defensive value, a lot of damage negation, and a pretty good bit of healing off of what you have here so far. Now for this particular ship, it starts out at fleet level. So that is a good thing about this. You don't have to go through the sometimes tedious task of getting a fleet ship in order to, or once you've dealt with the main C-Store variant. This is an all-in-one ship. It is already at fleet level, so all you have to do is farm out the mastery once, you get the trait, you're good to go. This is a 4 engineering, 3 science, 4 tactical layout. And for this particular ship, we have in our engineering seats, we have an assimilated module for the crit chance and severity it gives. It does give a little bit of control expertise, but we're not really going to be calling that into play very much, though it is worth mentioning it is there. Then we have a Trillium deplating, which is basically going to give us a bit of damage resistance as well as shield capacity. So it's basically a field generator and a neutronium armor slammed into one, so it benefits both areas in this case. Then we have our reinforced armaments console from the Beyond the Nexus mission. This is going to be really good because it's going to give us a fairly large chunk of power transfer for free. So it's basically a EPS console of sorts, at least the way we're using it here. Then we also have the Sustained Radiant Field. Now, some people I know don't really care for this console, but the reason it's here is because of how large of a bonus that it gives. Now, the damage bonus isn't much to write home about, admittedly. But when it says it gives the plus 20% bonus healing, or whatever the stats are for Mark 12. I've still got the Mark 15 epic stats on the brain from other stuff.
It's plus 20 bonus hull healing and plus 20 to bonus shield healing.
Thank you, good sir, for getting us the exact numbers. That is exactly what we needed. So when it says plus 20% bonus, it actually means a flat 20% bonus. So, and we actually tested this myself and Timberwolf did over on Tribble. So if it, and we actually compared it to some of the numbers. Like when it said, if it said I was getting, say, 5,000 healing normally on my engineering team, and then I equipped this console, well, I was now getting about a little over 6,000 healing, so it actually meant 20%. So this is a very high category of heal that you're going to be getting off of this console. And that's going to be something great to have as a tank, especially on some ships like this that can be just a little bit squishy. Let's be honest here, the Presidio can be just a little squish. Then for our science consoles, we have the piezoelectric focuser. This is going to give some nice stats. It's going to give, it's basically going to function as a free Polaron tactical console in this instance. And it's also going to give, let me pull up my thing here. It's also going to give you a 2-set bonus with your piezo beam, but it's going to give you a bit of flight speed and shield capacity. So you're going to be stacked out the wazoo on shield capacity for this ship. And you also have your temporal disentanglement suite, which is going to increase critical chance and severity based on your aux power, and also give you a little bit of shield damage resistance as well as maximum shield capacity. So an all-around great console to have. Then we have our hostile acquisitions, and I will pull the tooltip up briefly for this. This is basically going to be a nice hold and damage debuff as well as resistance debuff to foes, as well as giving you a bit of control expertise and a bit of accuracy rating. And it's a very cheap console to pick up, so we figured, why the heck not? We had a little bit left in our EC spending limit, so we rolled with it. And it ended up doing pretty good, I think.
Yeah, to give you an give you the example of the number we're seeing currently on holodeck, cheap is equaling 800,000 EC. So, in the grand scheme, that's not very expensive at all. Could it be cheaper? Yes, but considering the passives and the activatable, 800,000 is not that expensive at all. And there are ways to make that kind of EC in a day with that, or a couple of days, and really not feel like you're grinding, if that's the best way to put it.
Yep. And that does put it into perspective. I'm actually glad you brought that up, good sir. Because, like I say, for our bare bones budgets, we always assume a maximum EC spending limit of 2 million EC, unless somebody says otherwise, or we're doing a special variant like a 1 key or a dime budget. And the debuffs that it gives you that you can apply to foes are equivalent in some instances to many a rep power that's out there today. So you're basically getting something that's the equivalent of a rep or a reputation debuff in the form of a console that doesn't run that much on PC. Then finally, for our tactical consoles, we have 3 of the directed energy distribution manifolds from our yesterday's war mission, the terminal expanse. I about to say temporal. And this is because at the moment there's not a Polaron-specific drop that I was able to find. So we went with the ones that gives plus beams, since the majority of our weapons are beams. And then for our final tactical console, we have the Morphogenic Matrix controller to round it out and complete our 3-piece set. Now, as far as hangars go, you do have 1 hangar bay on the Presidio. I don't like assuming what pets people like to use, so we typically consider that personal preference. Now, if you do want a recommendation, I've had good luck with the Delta Flyer pets. Some people may like them, some may not. And then devices as well, we typically think of as personal preference, but one we do like to recommend is the Subspace Field Modulator, because it gives a free neutronium worth of resistance while active. However, it does debuff you for a minus 400 protonic damage resistance, so it can be a bit of a double-edged sword depending on when you use it. Now for our set bonuses, we'll touch base very quickly before moving on. For our set bonus, we're going to be calling on the 2-piece bonus for our Piezo set. That's going to give us 15% Polaron weapon damage, a bit of projectile or photon projectile and plasma, because it does give plasmas the alternate energy type, and it's going to give a bit of drain expertise, so that's going to help our Polaron drain as well. For our morphogenic set bonuses, for the 2-piece bonus, you're going to get a 15% recharge time reduction on fire at will, beam overload, scatter volley, rapid fire, torp spread, torp high yield, mine pattern alpha, and mine pattern beta. So basically, any of your tactical enhancement powers are going to get a 15% reduction time. So if you've got 2 points in your skill tree already in something like tactical readiness, then between those 2 skill points and this, that's going to push your tactical enhancements pretty much too global, if not outright too global. So it's going to be close. And then for your 3-set bonus, you're going to have a different buff depending on what you activate, and it lists that below. If you activate Thaw or Beam Fire at Will, if you activate Fire at Will or Beam Overload, you get a 2% critical hit chance, and that could stack up to 3 times for a maximum of 6% critical hit chance. Then you have Scatter Volley and Rapid Fire for 10% critical severity, maximum of 30%. If you activate Torp Spread, High Yield, Mine Alpha, or Mine Beta, you get 7.5% weapon damage category 1, up to a maximum of 22.5%. So that's almost an additional tactical console. And that's just by keeping those 3 buffs rotating, by continually activating the powers. So you've got quite a bit of power to play with in this particular ship. For our skills, this is our standard loadout for the show here, and we'll have some resources for you guys that want a more technical explanation of why we picked the certain skills that we did and why we chose to use those. But we have 14 engineering, 14 science, and 18 tactical points. You can see the lieutenant level points there are lieutenant commander, commander rank, captain, and then finally the admiral tier. So this is an all-around balanced build that we give people. That way they can adapt to pretty much any situation thrown at them or any ship they want to go with. For our specializations, we went with Intel and Miracle Worker. Intel primary for some of the damage benefits that it gives, and Miracle Worker to balance it out with a bit of healing. That way you're kind of in the middle of the spectrum on that. As far as our traits go, for our personal space traits we have Accurate, which is going to offset some of the firing mode penalty to things like Fawn, Scatter, Volley. Then we have our Beam Barrage, which is our Beam R&D crafting trait. We always assume you've leveled at least 1 crafting school, and in this case we assume beams. We have Beam Training for free beam damage. Elusive for free defensive value, that's going to make your ship harder to hit. Fleet Coordinator for a damage boost based on how many people are in the party, 2% minimum including yourself, 10% maximum including other members on the team. And you have your Grace Under Fire trait, which is your career-specific trait for engineers. That is because the builder defaults to an engineer. If you're not an engineer but you'd like to still use the build, swap in your own career-specific trait and you are good to go. Then we have the Nanite Repair Matrix, which is going to give us a nice little heal when we drop below a certain threshold. Point Blank Shot, which is going to increase our energy weapon damage the closer we are to the target, up to a certain maximum. Then finally, to round it out, we have Redirected Armor Plating, which is going to give us a pretty sizable boost to all of our damage resistance ratings when we are struck from behind or to the sides. And that's going to happen quite a bit as a tank. Now for our Starship traits, we have the Best Defense, which grants a whole healing buff along with normal effects of our attack patterns. Then we have All Hands on Deck, which actually comes from the Presidio itself. Whenever we activate a tactical or a command bridge officer ability, we reduce the recharge time of science, bridge officer powers, and captain powers. And that can occur once every couple of seconds. And that gives pretty significant cooldown reduction. We'll go in the extra mile from our Miracle Worker, which gives, if we heal somebody while they are above 90% maximum hull, they gain additional max hull cap for the duration. So basically some temporary HP. And then, because we're on the Federation side, we have the Honored Dead, which is going to give free damage reduction in terms of resistances to people that have the trait. That's going to equate to about 10% across the board. For our space reputations, we have the Advanced Target Systems for free severity, which is going to be about 16%. We have our Aux Power Offense, which is going to give accuracy and damage based on our Aux Power level. Precision for free critical hit chance. And then finally, our Magnified Firepower for a bit of Category 2 static damage. Then we have, for our active reps, our Anti-Time Entanglement Singularity, which is an AoE physical damage and slow. We have our Biomolecular Shield Generator, which gives some healing to the shields as well as a damage reduction while you're in the bubble. We have the Deploy Sensor Interference Platform, which is an oh crap, I'm going to die type of thing. It'll poof up a little platform that will taunt enemies to itself until it either dies or until the duration runs out, whichever of those two things happens first. Then finally, we round that out with our Quantum Singularity Manipulation. This is going to give a nice chunk of boosting to our science stats for the duration, as well as a temporary cloaking effect. To get more bang for your buck out of your anti-time, pop any exotic buffs you may have first, follow with Quantum Singularity Manipulation, and then drop an anti-time on their head, and you'll get a lot more damage out of it that way. Now finally, for our Bridge Officer seating, you have a Lieutenant Universal, Lieutenant Commander Attack, Commander Engineering / Command, Lieutenant Engineering, and a Lieutenant Science / Command on the ship. Now for our... we'll start with our engineering seats. For our Commander Engineering / Command, we have an Engineering Team 1. This is going to heal our hull a bit, as well as purge Viral Matrix type effects. We have an Oxed Sif, which is going to give temporary HP and a bit of damage reduction. We also have our Emergency to Weapons 3. That's going to give us a bit of extra damage to our weapons, as well as giving some free weapons power. And then we have Suppression Barrage 3 from our Command School. That's going to debuff the enemy's outgoing damage and ensure that we're going to take a lot less damage while that is active. Very nice to have. Then we have our Emergency Power to Engines on our Lieutenant Engineering. That's going to be a nice little boost to our engines when we need it, potentially get out of dodge power. And then we have our Reverse Shield Polarity to recharge our shields off of incoming damage in a pinch. For our Lieutenant Science / Command, we have our Science Team 1. That's going to purge certain subnucleonic based effects as well as heal our shields a bit. Then we have our Hazard Emitters for the heal over time and the debuff removal, such as removing Borg plasma fires and the bit of damage resistance that it gives while active. Now this is where it gets interesting, and this is where we're able to activate and keep our morphogenic buffs going. We have our tactical team, which is going to redirect our shields and purge boarding parties. Since we're running as a tank, we have our attack pattern Delta, which is going to debuff foes that shoot us and also buff us at the same time. In terms of damage resistance, we have our beam fire at will 3, which is going to give us that critical chance when we activate it, and also let us smack anything in range with a beam. Then we have our torpedo spread to back up our torp. That's going to also give us that weapon damage whenever activated. And then finally we have a copy of Scatter Volley 1. Now this is here mainly to cheese the critical severity on the ship. And that's pretty much why this is here. So because it has the 5 tactical, or the potential for 5 tactical powers, you can actually cheese all 3 of those buffs relatively easy. And having that much extra crit chance, severity, and weapon damage to play with at the high or at the low end, budget end, is actually pretty good. And even at the high end too, it's nice to have that extra stuff. In terms of cost, you're looking at about 1.8 million, assuming costs stay the same as they do at the time of recording this. And because this is the last week, we're assuming you don't have tier 6 reps. You're looking at about 60,000 dill. Roughly 8 days of build time, assuming only 1 tune is refining dilithium. So, if you have your tier 6 reps, you can cut that dill cost in half, and it would only take you about 4 days, if that. So, that's pretty much what we've got for a budget build this evening. Any comments from you guys?
Does it look pretty?
There it is.
I mean,
Well,
I have to say it this way, the Presidio looks nice. I do like the ship choice, as well as, you know, the way how you have everything set up. I feel like works pretty well for what you're looking for. Then again, I'm not the tactical genius with all the number crunching, so it just looks nice.
And what about you, Sir Timber?
That's what I think about it.
He's not looking at Gage.
I think he killed
Yeah,
himself.
No,
yeah,
You know, he's
You're
looking
looking
at
at
all the
game.
different reputation things in game.
Yeah.
Oh,
Social
jeez.
flourish. No, it looks pretty nice. I mean, there's not a lot of cost involved, which is always nice, and this is one reason why we all kind of harp on making sure you get the T6 reps. You're cutting dill costs and mark costs in half. Always a beautiful thing. And if you haven't done it yet, yeah, we are starting to move towards that. You've got Battle of the Binary Stars for your bonuses, and you got Winter Event. You're going to have plenty of sources for marks. As far as this build, pretty solid.
Alrighty then. But that's what we have as far as the budget build for this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. And I wanted to, like I say, I wanted to do this to show you guys that pretty much any Tier 5U or even T5 and pretty much any T6 in game can be made into a tank. It can be made into a tank. It's just a matter of how you set it up and how you fly it. But again, kind of quiet on the bugs front this week. Not a lot's really going on with the bit of content. As much as I hate to say it, kind of a little bit of a content drought we've had going on. But yeah, so moving right along, we have our RP corner this evening, and some more developments with our RP situation. Take it away, Game Master Artie.
Okay, so as the sneak peek from last week, we are starting a new thing called Hypothetical Scenarios. And this current one is a multi-week campaign I've dubbed Extragalactic Invasion. If that's not if that's not a title that tells you what's going to happen, I don't know what is. Basically, this week I will be explaining to our players, which would be Timber and Darkblade, as well as you, the audience, that will also be somewhat minor players if you choose to join in. The different rules, some ground rules, house rules, how we're going to basically play this game, and the general scenario of when we get to the story, which will come out after I talk about the rules. But generally speaking, it's nothing too extreme, but it's it's a lot of it for making sure the game-breaking stuff doesn't happen in such an RP event. I'm not wanting to completely limit player interaction with the world that's created. I don't want to kind of derail anything that the players may have as a plan. I want to kind of keep this very fluid, as you would see on show. You don't know what everyone's thinking when you're watching, but we'll get to that. The major thing about this is I'm going to be showing you, the audience, various different aspects in actually running an RP event, especially one this grand, which we would call a story arc, for lack of a better term, or a campaign if you feel like it, if you're going back to standard tabletop terms. So starting off, I will explain some of these ground rules. First off, I don't want any temporal ships, because for one, if we have something coming in from the 31st century, I feel like they would have already faced whatever you're facing, and they would have just been like, oh yeah, so here's what you do, and that's it, game over. Although there are quote unquote temporal ships, as it's labeled in game, like the various TOS vessels, those I will allow to an extreme that they're somehow still in service after being around for 200 years. And even in NX, if you decide to rob a museum, I'm very leery, but I'll be okay with it. But anything 26th century and so on, it's mostly a no-go. Same thing with any time travel abilities. The temporal operative is most likely not going to happen. But moving on from that, various multi-faction alien ships, like say the Bodwar ships or other Delta Quadrant aliens, Ilachi, any of those outrageous ships out there, I rather not have players use them. But if you do give me a good reason and a little bit of character description, and in the comment section when we post this to YouTube, feel free to put it there. I'll give it a look over and give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm trying to keep this very fluid. I don't want to, make it seem like I'm very demanding, the whole, stuck up my behind kind of GM. I will say that the Cardassian and Dominion forces may join in later on as an actual other group besides the Federation, Klingons, and Romulans in the current story, depending on how everything flows. Also, you are allowed to use the Vulcan and Dorian ships, Gorn. Those other factions are within, the Federation, Romulan, and Klingons. Next would be weapons of mass destruction is a no-go. So I don't want someone to kind of just go in and go, so I have a doomsday machine, and this is how we're going to play it. No. That's just a no-go immediately. And that's basically it. For the house rules, ground rules, when the only other thing would be once a decision comes up, it would have to definitely be final. We don't want to go like 5 minutes into a mission going with one plan and then someone going, actually the plan's going to be this, and completely change everything from what everyone else was thinking. That would be kind of finicky, but we'll worry about that bridge when we get to it. But before I continue and actually get to our two players, and continue monologuing, you guys must love this. For you audience members that wish to join, it's very simple of how to join. When this gets posted to YouTube, go ahead and go to the comment section, type in what your character's name is, the rank, species, a fun fact about your character, or an entire personnel file if you're feeling like you want to go full RP hardcore for something simple. Whatever their ship is, class, name, or what department they're in, if they want to kind of tag along with someone else's ship, or a station or a general area, and what you wish to kind of have your character be doing in this universe, and then we'll have somewhat minor RP scenes in the comment sections when we get past all that. But yeah, that is the initial me monologue. Now I will introduce our players, starting with Timber. Timber, you are... What is your character? Go ahead and give us the whole 9 yards.
I mean, my character, going by my character's name, as we see on the stream, it's Chris Torrance. He's, you know, just one of your typical captains that's gone through hell and back as far as the story. I don't call him a hero of the Iconian War, I call him a survivor. We've all seen through the blog of the rebuilding of the Enterprise, F, what that Odyssey class went through. Well, mine looked about the same, if not a little bit worse, afterwards. And I had to use a temporary ship as command to help with, you know, the events that happened afterwards as they rebuilt my ship. And earning respect, regaining that respect further, solidifying it with the Klingons, because there's always been strained relations between us and the Klingons, even if we are allies, the Romulans. And, you know, with my love of my flagship, you know, I hated that it got blown up, but I knew there was something wrong with its design. And I was seeing the, what was it, the Block 2 variants. We had the Endeavour, the Sojourn, and the Yorktown. They're being built and advertised to high-ranking officials and talking about the new wave for our flagship classes. And I'm looking at all of them going, yeah, these are great, but I'm noticing flaws in each one of them. And I'm like, well, if my Odyssey class is being rebuilt, but the fleet into one of these variations, yeah, it's getting some nice benefits, but I'm still seeing the same weaknesses. So with fighting through all these various, you know, mini wars and conflicts and, you know, putting out these diplomatic branches with other races so that we can not have to worry about as much conflict from our steadfast allies. I also started to put a plan together for my Odyssey class as it's being rebuilt. I wanted to make for sure we would be ready for anything. I mean, we've gone through hell, and until my ship was ready, I did captain an Odyssey class that had to deal with the Kintari, it's had to deal with the Borg, it's had to deal with the Zenkethi, you know, all these newer players until mine was ready. I wanted to make for sure, not only was I ready, and my crew was ready, we could probably win regardless. So, I initiated what was considered Block 3, as far as ship design for the Odyssey class, and what we came up with is a 3 nacelle Odyssey Dreadnought. Now, it doesn't look like your traditional 3 nacelles where you got all 3 on top. I have a schematic I was able to find, and I cannot reference the author because I don't know the author's name. I found this thing about a year and a half ago. So I don't have the author, though if we can find the author, that would be awesome, because I'd love to credit him for this design. The 3rd nacelle is embedded in the bottom of your secondary hull for your Odyssey class, and the nacelles are based off the Yorktown, while the rest of the body is the classic Odyssey design.
Which we can get a picture if Blade clicks on the link that I posted.
Yeah, I gave Artie this photo because I wanted him to have reference of what I was looking at. But the big improvements on this is, you know, I wanted to take care of some of the weaknesses. Now, it still has its weaknesses, naturally, but I wanted it to be ready. So 3rd nacelle, so even more power to engines, even more slipstream, time, and power. It's also got a trinary lance built in, I'll talk about that later, and extra cannons on the side of the neck, which are another tech we'll talk about. But the way I wanted this built, take care of some of the flaws that I'm seeing in the individual Odyssey Block 2s that I'm seeing, merge them together with all of its strengths for one ship that would lead the fleet into the unknown, quite honestly, for conflict. And that's what it's built for. It's not necessarily built for science. It can handle science, it can handle diplomatic missions, but this is to basically take the Endeavour and up the notch by a factor of 10, and to be ready for anything that might come our way. We've faced in combat the Iconians and the Zenkethi and the Nakul and the Crinum. We want to make sure we're ready for them without having to deal with some temporal shenanigans. We just want to be like, press a button and, you know, we're ready. So that's kind of the design and my character. We've gotten some of these techs from our allies because we've earned that right from them based on sacrifice or honor or diplomacy, that we've earned that level of respect from our allies. They're willing to do joint ventures of technology on this Odyssey class for the future of not just the Federation, but of the Alliance powers. And this ship is ready to launch right now. This is actually the maiden voyage of this ship, which is the Wolf Knight A. We couldn't salvage the original, so this was a brand new construction, but we do have one or two pieces from the original Wolf Knight embedded into the ship so that she can still have the soul of the original Wolf Knight that fell in the Iconian War.
Very nice.
Blade still hasn't clicked on the image.
Oh, he did.
Oh, he did? I didn't see it.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Before we continue on to our special stuff about the ship, Blade, tell us about your character.
Well, Cruzan is from a species known as the Azurians that hail from the far side of Federation territory, just outside known Federation space initially. They joined the Federation not too long before the invasion of the Vega colony by the Borg. They were about the same tech level as Starfleet, and initially Cruzan's original ship that he piloted as part of the Azurian military was destroyed, taking down a Borg cube, or specifically a Borg tactical fusion cube is the way I wrote it, but he sacrificed his ship by beaming a warp core into the hull of the ship and detonating it, forcing a warp core breach inside the Borg vessel. And because his original ship was lost, he was given a surplus Cardassian galore to help combat some of the immediate threats, since he was owed a few favors by some folks at Starfleet. The Olympic served during the Iconian War and some of the subsequent wars, but was damaged nearly beyond repair, and as such would not be ready in time for this coming threat. In order to combat this threat, he's taking command of a new construction after the various conflicts. And as an admiral, he got to pick his own ship, and he wanted something a little bit more advanced, a little bit more prepared and modern, so he went with a Daystrom class cruiser known as the Osijek. The Osijek has a few oddball techs, and as a test bed of technology, has some stuff that may be traditionally more associated with other Federation vessels, but with one or two little tricks from his home planet. He's seen quite a few conflicts over the years, tends to be stern when he needs to be, yet he also knows when to, also as the saying goes, he knows when to forgive. Basically, he's a seasoned military man that's seen a lot of conflict and prefers not to put up with bullcrap. But, yeah, that's just a little bit of that, and as a more longer-lived species, similar to Vulcans in nature, he's able to use that battle experience for good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Alright, so we have our two players, their characters all set up. We'll get to the fancier text and stuff when we get closer to our first engagement, as this is just initiation week. We're basically just starting up details into the story. And for some people that may get confused when I talk about the current timeline, the way we're having it is that everything currently in STO is resolved, so we're not having to really deal with any remnants of the Iconian War. We're not worrying about the Herc going around blowing stuff up. We're not worrying about the Dominion starting the Second Dominion War or anything like that. But for the most part, all this is everything that we have in STO has been stretched a little bit because some RPers find it ludicrous that all this has happened within like 2 years. So we're stretching it out to this being the later end of 2418. So starting out, we'll now start getting into character. Everyone ready?
Ready as we'll ever be. I'm just hoping someone in chat is willing to join us on this endeavor.
Okay. So, while out on your usual patrol routes, both of you, separately, get a hail from Starfleet Command, designated Alpha Priority, straight from Starfleet Command Headquarters. Your XO would answer it, hand it off to you, and both of you would been ordered from the higher ups, the brass, to relocate your vessels off their normal patrol routes and go meet a substantial Starfleet force forming at Starbase 37 in the Albadaring sector.
Well.
Oh.
And during that, our connection crashed, and, we lost contact with this universe, so we went back to the holodeck and tried again.
Yeah, let's get back in game while I continue to exposition you guys into the story.
And for potato guns, honestly, I've never done, like one of these RPGs like this. Dungeons and Dragons is the only thing that really has ever popped into my head when I've thought of this. So this is my first time ever dealing with this. My study for this was Hyper RPG did an RPG of Power Rangers. I've been studying how that worked out. That's what I've been using as my homework. So if you're wanting to jump in, there is nothing wrong with this being your first time ever. We'll stumble along together. How about that?
Wise words. Alright, I'm back in.
Meet me on ESD 22.
Yep, on the way. Yep, it wouldn't be a pilot review show without a technical error,
True.
Yeah, sounds about normal. Meep.
Phone. Anyway, as we're going back to the desk, continue, good sir.
Alright, so you both get priority Alpha hails from Starfleet Command and are ordered to your ships are reassigned to the Albadaran sector to a slowly forming Starfleet Romulan Klingon task force in the Albadaran sector. Specifically at Starbase 37. Sorry. All these different numbered stations. So, on the way there, you've noticed that there is substantial civilian traffic being pulled away from those sectors. Something is strangely off. Starfleet Command didn't give you much detail of what's going on, except that you need to be there at pronto, remain at yellow alert until further off, until someone tells you otherwise. And once you get into system, you see these. One second, I actually have numbers here. Sorry. You see a large amount of Starfleet vessels, about nearly 250 some ships, varying from Mirandas to Akiras to some of the more modern ships. You see various other of the newer battle cruisers and whatnot forming this fleet around this standard Starfleet base with various defense satellites being posted up next to it. And you receive a hail from the station. This is where you'll start and see your characters.
Now,
yeah.
After I've beamed down, my question is, have I already met Cruzan before? Or is this the first time I'm meeting Cruzan?
I will leave that up to you two, as I do not control your backstories. So
I'll let
yeah.
Darkblade decide that one. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna beam down with my second in command, so that he can get the lay of the land as far as what the other commanders are hearing in the fleet, and I'm gonna head towards the Admiral's office for a briefing on what in the world is going on.
I also beam down, and I check in with an ensign on the transporter chief on where everybody's meeting up, and heading towards the Admiral's office. I run into Captain Torrance, which I say, "Greetings, Captain Torrance. I've heard quite a bit of your service record from the Iconium War, good sir."
Captain Cruisin, I've heard of you as well. Your luck, however, with your Galore class was not the greatest, but I do hope that you can get that fixed. I heard you were quite fond of it.
Yes, she was a tough little ship, though I cannot complain too much because it gave me an admiral posting not long after the war ended. I was hoping that I would be able to take a break from all of this fighting by now, though I hear we may have a potential new threat on our hands. Though after the dealings with the Kelvins some time ago, I'm not surprised that we may potentially have an extragalactic threat, as some of the rumors are stating. Have you heard anything on that?
Not really. I was actually heading towards the Admiral's office at this point to see if we could just get the official briefing and stay away from the rumors, as it were. So it is disappointing. I mean, my ship is here at Space Dock. I was actually about to take her on a maiden voyage. Thanks to all of the refits, I was getting ready to just test her scientifically in a little training cruise, I guess, to get used to her, and I might have to just ramp her up all the way to combat. But I think we'll be ready. I just want to know what we're dealing with here.
And
I hear that's
well, how about we go to the Admiral's office together, we figure out what's going on, and have a better situational analysis up there, because we really need to find out what's going on.
lead the way, sir.
And as you two enter to the Admiral's office, you would note there's many other Starfleet captains, a few Romulan commanders and their executive officers, as well as one or two Klingons, and a few of them coming in through a holocom channel posted up in the small briefing room. Moments later, a small ensign walks in, human, decides to blow this little whistle. Admiral on deck! And all these other captains, commanders, and all that kind of stiffen up as a rather average height human walks in. Admiral Pips, the dark Odyssey uniform glistening off of the lights from the various panels and whatnot, steps in. You would both recognize this man as Admiral Bernard. He has been in a few conflicts varying from the Klingon War all the way up to the Iconian War. Nothing too dramatic, except that, he's been good at defending. He hasn't retreated from a battle, but yet somehow survives every time. Nothing too extravagant as cheating the no-win scenarios or anything like that. Just your average admiral at this point. He comes.
I'm gonna briefly lean over to Cruisin and be like, I don't know what's going on, but we got a combat-hardened admiral, and we're seeing Klingons and Romulans in here. Something is going down.
I had hoped with this new position that I would be able to have some bit of a quiet time, but apparently we're going to be called into battle once more.
The admiral walks up to the center, to the front chair. Please be seated, everyone. Relax. You'll need it for the moment. And as he rests down into the chair, there we go. Words. He looks at the various officers and immediately focuses into points at the panel off to his back right. And you would notice a map of the Albaderan sector and the nearby sectors there. Blade, if you could get the photo up, please. And you would notice the number of Starfleet vessels in scattered areas here, various Klingon fleets positioned. And this one sector, this one subsector in the Baja sector is just completely blocked out with a number of unidentified signals. Unknown IFFs, information front or foe. And there's just no traffic coming in or out of the Baja sector, which, as most commanders, captains and commanders would know, is a predominantly Klingon sector. For some reason, there's just no traffic now, and there's this weird just number of blips that nothing could be seen. The admiral then looks back over to the various captains and commanders. 3 days ago, we lost 7 spy satellites in the Trailus system. This was originally used to watch out for any Klingon forces back during the original Federation Klingon War, but now have gone silent. Along with this, the Klingon colony in the Trailus system has also gone quiet. We have no idea what has happened except a minor footage sent on subspace just before we lost signal contact in the Baja sector. As he motions back to the view screen, it is a slightly garbled, staticky message, a video message of various bright flashes of ships, various different sizes and classes, all jumping out of warp, almost on top of some of the satellites in the view. And you can also note there would be some smaller civilian satellites, civilian ships going by, a few Klingon vessels, and they're just suddenly vanishing. These unknown vessels come in. They seem to fire this bright white-blue energy beam just straight at their targets, these various satellites and ships, and those ships just immediately are obliterated. Debris is just everywhere across the view screen, taking out the satellites along the way, and this large battleship rams the satellite where it's getting the view from, and then you lose contact.
What kind of weapons could do this?
That is a good point. What can do this? From what we've seen in this video file here, as well as the minor scans that were sent to us just before we lost contact of that sector, we've gotten various energy readings which none of them make sense, as well as a estimated number of unknown vessels that have entered this region. So far, we have counted up at least 150 vessels just in the one image. We're not sure past that. Long-range scanners think there has to be at least 2,000 vessels at this point. From their entry vectors from warp, they're coming from outside the galaxy arm, coming in from one of the other extragalactic galaxies. We're not sure from which one yet, but they've come in and decided to set up home in the Trailus system.
2,000? That's gotta be... They're coming in with hostile intent. That's gotta be an invasion force.
Nothing is certain as of yet, Captain.
We've heard rumors of odd energy weapons before, but my people, we have nothing like this on record. And we've been through quite a vast area of space. Nothing like this at all.
Do we have any forward listening posts or potentially... I know we have some Nebula and Sutherland classes that have been built for AWACS, where they're just built for the most advanced sensor gathering possible. Are any of them nearby able to get any additional details on what we might be facing?
A few of these vessels have been redirected from Deep Space 13 as well as Starbase Lunsford. and some have already been here at Starbase 37. From what we can tell right now through long-range sensors, these unknown energy readings, they look dire. They're a lot more sinister than we originally thought. From what we can tell from cross-referencing from the scans and the video recording, these vessels fire some sort of amplified tachyon energy as weapons. From what we can also tell, they have minimal shielding but have very dense armor. Somehow, even the vessels that we saw in the video stood up to had no chance against these unknown assailants. Their energy fire just bounced right off their armor, or absorbed straight in. Along with that, apparently a lot of these vessels are also using a new form of power generation. They use a somehow dark matter reaction, from what a lot of these scans show. Although we have no way of confirming this, as we have now just only seen these vessels due to recording, and long-range sensors not being totally reliable due to unknown interference.
Dark matter energy is only theoretical even among my own people. How is this possible?
Just the regulation alone must be, I would say, a miracle worker's job, to say the least.
Aye.
It is unknown at this moment, but this is why we've also called in many forces from across the sector to meet at this starbase, including our allies from the Romulan Republic and the Klingon Empire. We believe that since they decided to strike into Klingon territory and take out a number of civilian vessels, and we believe might have destroyed the Trailers 2 colony. We have no confirmation on that yet, but we believe since they have struck the first blow, we should prepare for any outward engagement. We have another 100 vessels coming in by tomorrow, which would equal up to 250 some ships in our flotilla currently.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, Admiral, I don't think numbers are really going to help us at this point if we don't know how to at least slow them down or stop them. I mean, if our standard phasers are really not doing anything to their hulls, I mean, penetrating shields, it sounds like it's easy, but if we're not doing anything to their hull, then having an extra 50 ships is, and I don't want to put this lightly, is just going to add more carcasses to the, to space. We need to figure out how we can actually stop them. What other options we might have, even if it's misdirection and trickery.
Which leads me to my next point in this meeting. As currently we have no idea what we're facing, who we're facing. I will be commanding current logistics in this sector as well as surrounding sectors to help out with this possible war effort, depending on what you find. Along with that, Captain Torrance and Admiral Cruzan, you two are now fleet commanders of the the 15th Fleet. Along with that, any Allied vessels within the nearby sectors are also under your command to do whatever you feel fit.
I mean,
I had hoped not to be in such a war again very soon. I was hoping for a rather quiet assignment. But I am assuming you're expecting the worst if you've already brought us here and have assembled such a fleet. And it would seem our cohort has also heard vast rumors of dark matter deposits, beings able to wield these. Do you suspect that it could possibly be the same people?
There is that possibility. Granted, I don't look forward to war. My ship's ready for it. I wonder if there is even a remote chance for a diplomatic option. We've seen so much conflict it has weakened the fleet, and not just ours, but the Klingons and Romulans. And to commit to another war against like an enemy like this, it could hurt us further. We're ready for it. We know that all these crews out here in the fleets will commit to it if necessary. But I'm hoping at some point we can find some kind of diplomatic solution. Since we're in this area, have we heard anything from the Tholians? They're very xenophobic when it comes right down to it, and this is, considering they like to claim New Kara Prime, this is in their backyard as well.
From the Admiral speaks up again, turning his chair to fully look at the map, which you can, out of character, you could go ahead and put up the map so we can, everyone look at it. The Admiral points at the current Tholian fleet over New Kara. From what we can tell, the Tholians over New Kara aren't taking any action. They, from what Starfleet intelligence as well as Klingon intelligence has informed us, the Tholians think this as a problem for the minor races, meaning the Federation and the Klingons deal with. And since it's only the Klingons that have had a bloody nose due to the engagement in the Trailus system, they believe inaction will be fine for them. Until they are attacked, it is unknown what they'll do.
See. Okay.
What, if any, plans and defenses have we created since the original incursion by the Kelvins back during Captain Cook's time? I would have suspected that by now we would have plans in place for such a deal.
Sadly, we have no idea who we're facing. We don't even know if it is the Kelvins, for one. From what we can tell, the technical prowess from the records about the Kelvins, as well as what we've seen here in the visual records, we have no idea to confirm nor deny if it is the Kelvins at all. But for defenses for it, we were hoping that through our advancements in trying to fight the Borg, as well as to fighting the Iconians, and previously the Herc, we were hoping that we would be ready for anything. But from what we can tell, we're not even sure that now. Starfleet Command is prepared to send any resources necessary to push back any invasion force, and we're hoping that it doesn't take too much of a beachhead to destroy any civilian targets in the nearby sectors. At that same moment, one of the Klingon captains stepped forward. The Klingon Empire is ready to defend the sector, with or without the Romulans or the Federation's help. They've decided to stake a home within Imperial territory. We will strike back. And right after that, one of the Romulans stepped forward and looked at the Klingon. Without our help, you would have no fleet at all. They would just rampage straight to Kronos and destroy you right where you sit. But with all of us put together like we did during the Iconian War, we at least stand a chance against whoever these are. The Admiral
Captains, let's not have any conflict here. We've been through too much. We've fought at each other's throats, and we've been allies against some of the worst things we've ever seen. For all we know, they're using this to start chaos where we will panic. And as for the Klingons, you know that the Federation has proved we are honorable, and we will fight in combat side by side with you, and if we have to, we will die in honorable combat. That's not a question. We just need to know that if there is going to be honorable combat, there can also be victory glorious enough that if any of your warriors or our officers fall in battle, they are secured a place in Sto-vo-kor.
My own people, when we joined the Federation, we realized that together we are stronger. My own people fought a bloody long war against the Borg, and had it not been for the Federation, we most certainly would not be sitting here like this. At least I would not be sitting here as this. I would be floating somewhere dead in space. I would be just a lowly refugee somewhere, with barely any ability to fight. This bickering gets us nowhere, though I must agree with my cohorts. If we cannot at least identify what they are, we must identify what they are not. That will give us a good staging grounds to formulate a plan. Our cohort has suggested that if the Tholians are not interested, we can at least trust that these potential invaders are not temporal in origin. I must say that I agree with this assessment.
As do I.
At this point, the Admiral stands and looks at those gathered. Then I leave it to you. I'll have to inform Starfleet Command as well as the various factions of what's going to be currently happening in the next few days. All our assets are up to you two. Good luck. And the Admiral turns and begins to head out the door. The various other officers start to chit-chat amongst themselves, and one of this ensign that escorted the Admiral in sets a pad in front of Cruzan, and then walks away.
Cruzan, my friend, what is on that pad? What have you got there?
It seems that on this pad we contain various possible routes these people could eventually take. They're within striking distance of far too many sectors. We must formulate a plan with the resources we have available.
Indeed. While trying to figure out if they do have a weakness. But it does seem that conventional beam weaponry will not work. But I didn't see anything in this report when it comes to our photon torpedoes, or anything that we might have developed as an experimental weapon against the Borg or the Iconians. So there might be hope if we need to pull out all the aces in the deck, as it were.
I agree with this assessment. We must figure out what, if any, weakness we can exploit. Even among my own people, this was just theoretical. We did not know that such technology was able to be developed. We'd only considered it a theory. Perhaps we should start by expanding what we know of this dark matter energy sources. Perhaps there is a weakness we can be found and exploit it.
Indeed. As a matter of fact, I believe a few friends of mine from the USS Malinche, it's a brand new Sutherland class, I think they have extensive knowledge on what little there is on dark matter energy production and how it might relate to omega particles. I think we need to check in with them. They should be around, as far as their starship, in Docking Bay 4, but I think I saw their chief science officer up in the mess hall.
Yes, we should pay him a visit. I will also pull the records and all of the scientific knowledge that my people had on this dark matter, though I'm afraid, sir, that our knowledge is not much more advanced than yours. We've got very little beyond the experimental stages, where we theorized such a device could be built, but we never managed to work out any of the math behind it. I agree with our cohort. We should prepare for heavy kinetic damage and perhaps long-term warfare, because I suspect that if they cannot be reasoned with, we're going to be in this for the long haul.
And while we're at it, we need to see if there's any kind of sensor logs, detailed sensor logs we can get on their weapons. It's one thing to damage them, but it's looking like, especially for the smaller ships I saw in the video, they were getting one-shotted by these weaponry, which means standard low-grade shields on maybe a light cruiser are not going to be able to hold up to this weaponry. We need to figure out what it is. We're essentially in the same place we were during the First Dominion War, well over 40, 50 years ago. It was 40 years ago. It's sleep, you know, dealing with all these refits. Phased Polaron weaponry from the Dominion threw the Federation for a loop for at least a year or two, before we were able to capture a Jem'Hadar warship and study the technology up close and personal. And that's something we might have to consider if we're engaging in combat, to try and capture one of their vessels so we have a full understanding of what we're dealing with. I think we should start planning for that event, maybe use some misdirection so that we can capture a vessel intact.
Would that not also potentially provoke our potential adversaries? Do you think this would really be a good course of action?
It's probably not ideal, but we want to know more about them. We are going to eventually have to do it if our normal ways of figuring this out, whether it be combat or long-range sensors, fails. So I think we have a few options in the nearby systems when it comes to cloak and dagger tactics that we could use to our advantage. So there could be a way of doing this, and if we do piss them off, we could find areas of space nearby that could level the playing field potentially due to the relative nature of space in that region. I mean, it's got to be a risk we're going to have to take at some point or another. We're going to end up facing these guys in combat, and I definitely do not want a repeat of what I saw on that replay on the screen.
Aye, it reminds me too much of some of the battles that my own people had against the bog. We simply do not know what we don't know at this point. And what we don't know could very well come back to bite us in the rear. And I prefer to at least be somewhat prepared. Very well. Let's combine our resources. I will pull what records I can from my people, and upon this, hopefully we can find a weakness.
And
in the meantime, we must prepare for outright combat and cloak and dagger. Let's keep all of our options on the table.
And our captain has joined us here at this table while we're talking. Buck. I may call you Buck. I like your idea, because we do not know if they can detect stealth technology, cloaking devices. But I'd like to ask, unless you have a cloaking device on your ship directly, to potentially team up with one or two of the Klingon or Romulan captains and see if they're willing to use a couple of their cruisers that have a good cloaking device on board to see if they can sneak close enough and scan that wreckage. That could actually give us a little greater detail if their cloaking scanners are limited to non-existent. We can not only learn about their weapons that they're hitting us with, but we could learn more about the ships themselves if possible. I'll leave that to you, Buck.
I will see to it you have whatever resources you need made available to you.
Indeed.
Alright. Out of character. Wonderful job. This was the first meeting, good episode 1. Along with any of the information here, I will provide what was on the data pad that the ensign gave to Cruzan on the YouTube video when we post that up, as well as the current map of the situation at hand, well, the one that you saw posted here just moments ago. That will be shared openly, so if anyone has a plan, like how we had here, how we're discussing it here, you can just add it straight into the comments once you show what character and whatever you have. So, there you go. Congrats everyone for this first event. I hope we have a fun time after this. This is going to be great.
And it was. And potato guns. As far as how you figure out all that, just type it out as a couple of paragraphs of how you're handling your conversations with the Romulans and Klingons, and how many potential allies you get. Considering it's a stealth force, you want to make it small, and type out that interaction and then the results of the mission. We're going to assume that when we come back to the table again, when you're coming to meet with me and Blade, or I should say Chris and Cruzan, that you have the results of that mission, good, bad, or indifferent, and we will go from there.
yes, as GM, as something I was going to lead into this, once we actually get the, yeah, you can basically make a script for it. What you can basically do is when you go into the, once we get this on YouTube, you'll post out what you've prepared, what you're ready to do, and I will post out what you find, what you may see, and stuff like that. The next episode, for when we get into a big meeting room like this, will probably be next pilot review show. There might be something small in between here and there that you would see through the comments on the video. But besides that, thank you guys for episode 1. I hope we see more of you guys joining in next episode, and we get more ideas to see how these extragalactic invaders are being so overpowered in our space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to this already. Me and Blade just had fun winging the shit out of that. I mean,
Pretty
that was
much
fun. And you guys in the comments, I mean, like I said, my studying has been for a Power Rangers RPG on another channel. So I'm going solely off of that for everything that we're doing as far as my homework, and I'm having a blast. And the more people that we can have join us on this, the more side missions and, I guess, multi-dimensional this particular RPG can go, the better. I mean, you know, we've got Potato Guns. He's doing his own micro mission that he's going to do reports on in here, while me and Blade are doing the primary story. Well, you can jump in and have your own mini missions, and that can be assault, it can be recruiting new allies, it can be scientific study, it can be, what, you know, anything that you're trying to do to help this cause. So the more that can get done at the same time, obviously, is going to help us out.
Indeed.
But yeah.
But I think that pretty much covers it. We'll pick up our next episode on the next pilot review show. Also, remember, this next week we will also be taking into account our Tier 6 reputations finally, and our alternate energy types, because we believe by now folks should be finishing up those things, or be close to finishing them up. So we feel it's been enough time that we can safely take that into account. But yes, definitely feel free to join us for the RP event, and we'll have some fun with that. But anyways, that's what we've got for a show this evening, folks. We ran quite a bit longer than normal. There was some extra setup involved to get this going. Thank you to our GM, Artie, for helping to run this event for us.
You're welcome. These will be somewhat longer than the standard episode, sadly. So.
Yep. But it gives us something to do during the downtime without so many missions and stuff going on. But for now, folks, everything on our way out the door, as always, a shout out to our good friends over at the Temporal Armada. They're a very cool bunch of people. Be sure to check those guys out as well on their program. They have a lot of good stuff going. Also, a shout out to our other good friends over at the Kurtang Pirate Radio. The party is there. And that's why we always keep their station streaming on our little music bot here on the server, because it always has a good selection of music. But also, if you have any requests for the budget builds, feel free to let us know. We do take requests, and sometimes we just wing it because we can. But if you have any requests for budget build, like I say, let us know. You know, say, hey, I've got maybe only a bare bones type of budget, or I want to go more mid-range, or I'm looking for something a bit more high-end. What can you do for me? You know, let us know your budget. Let us know what level of, let us know what kind of ship you've got, what you're wanting to do with it, and we'll hook you up with a build. If you feel that your ship and your gear are in order, but it's your piloting that needs a little bit of work, get a brief little video clip of your piloting to us, and feel free to submit that to us over YouTube or whatever way is easiest for you, and we'll review that and offer you some tips and tricks to possibly improve. If you have any bugs, feel free to let me know, let one of these screwballs know. We'll pass it along to the developers, and we'll see to it that they get it, because they don't like bugs any more than you or I do. Finally, if you have any requests for the RP Corner, let Artie know, and he may just talk about that sometime on air for you. But anyways, folks, that's what we have for a show this week. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Like I say, we ran a little bit longer because it takes a little bit more to set some of this stuff up to get it going. But for now, folks, this is the Pilot Review Show, reminding you to have your tribbles spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.
See you guys later.
Night night.